Hello and welcome to EverLogic Training. My name is Jennifer. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, where we will be talking about the system setup of EverLogic. So this is where everything is done usually during implementation, and along the way during a progression of your time with EverLogic, there may be changes that needed to be made. So we'd like to go through each section of the system setup. In the company section, we have company, so we'll start there. This is where you're going to find some basic information about your dealership, including the name, address, phone number, and some contact information on the Contact Information tab. We also have an email server tab where we will help you set up your email. Anytime you are adding or changing information on these forms, please always make sure to click Save. The next item we'll look at today is the location. When you're setting up a new location, please be sure to reach out to our support staff so that we can get everything set up accordingly for your new location. Please notice that when I went to the location item, it automatically shows me all of the locations for my dealership. I can then click to edit, or I can add a new. On the location form, again, there's a lot of basic detail that we will be adding here, including your location and your sub-location. You have your dealer's license, your service license, and then on the right side, county, state, and the FEID. Down below, including your phone number, along with the billing and shipping address, we have your contacts. On the location logo tab, there is a place for you to browse and add your dealership logo. The sales tax information includes your state tax ID, a place for you to choose if you are charging sales tax on labor only with parts, tax parts only, or tax labor and parts. Below is where you will add in the tax rates, along with a maximum allowed and a minimum price if available. At the bottom, then you will mark, are you charging taxes on shop supplies, environmental fees, sublets, freight, and core parts. And then the other tab is for parts and service information. So we have your suggested markup rate, and then you also have a percentage that you can charge on your shop supplies and environmental fees, which also include a cap if you have one. There's your profit margins listed, and down below is your technician scheduler hours. This is a required section, so you'll assign your service hours here. And then save. That's your location information. All right, we'll move on to employees. And if I search with the active button marked here, it will show me all my active employees. There is an option to add a new employee. And please notice I'm going to compare this to an existing employee. So on the right side is the new employee form versus on the existing employee in this section. So we do use the multi-factor authentication. So if the box is marked for the employee can sign on here, then the multi-factor authentication information will show here. So again, here on the right, we have our new employee form. If I click on the employee can sign on, you see how the multi-factor information is displayed. I'm going to close the new form on the right side and use only the existing employee here, because I want to show you a shortcut on adding a new employee. So this is an existing employee. If I have a new employee that's going to have the same or similar permissions, I can access the existing employee and then click on Copy Permissions. It then opens the new employee form, and because I did copy permissions, the box for employee can sign on is automatically marked, and the multi-factor authentication information is available for us to complete. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and just mention that up at the top is where you will add in the employee's name. So at the top of the form, you will add the employee's first and last name. EverLogic has automatically assigned a reference number. We've already mentioned the employee can sign on button, and then you also have an employee active button. Now, I will mention this option here. For some reason, this employee is no longer working at your dealership. I would encourage you to remove the check mark here, and this employee will remain in the system in case they were to come back and work with your dealership at some time in the future. I would use this option versus using the delete option at the top, but it's totally up to you. All right, and then down below on the Employee Information tab, this is where you will assign them a specific location. Unless you assign a separate username, an employee can only be assigned to one location at a time. And the employee type, so if they are parts, service, or sales, maybe an accounting or an admin employee. You can also assign them to a specific department, a title, and then indicate who they report to. And please make sure that you mark this box if the employee is a manager. All right, and then below you have your email address along with your email password. Remember, this is the email password, not the EverLogic password. Very important when you're adding your email here that you add your email password. Down below you have your phone numbers and your birth date. Now the birth date is available for us if you require support to assist you with the multi-factor authentication. And then your address below. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the User Information tab. And this is where you will assign the employee the user ID for them to log into EverLogic on a daily basis, along with a temporary password where you will need to add the password and confirm it. And the employee can then go over to their profile and change the password. On the right side, you will assign them a panel, and this is what gives them access to the panel on the left side. Down below the panel, you have the option to give the employee access to the dashboard and to assign a security level. Okay, we are currently using security level -1 or 0. These security levels are for access to scanned documents. So for instance, on most of our windows, we have the toolbar option for documents. This is where you will add or view your scanned documents. And this security level is what gives this employee permission to view low secured items. That would be a -1. Instead, if you would like the employee to have access to secured documents that may include personal identifiable information like your social security numbers, address, phone numbers, then you would assign a 0 here. I'd like to take just a moment to show you where these security levels will be found on your documents. From your Home tab, if I go to Documents, When you scan in items, you have your security level listed at the top. And as we mentioned, a -1 would be assigned to those documents that do not include sensitive information. A 0 security level would be included for those documents that do include personal identifiable information. And down below, there is a place for you to add a number of minutes. This will determine when the employee will be automatically logged out of EverLogic due to inactivity. Down below, we have our permissions. Our permission buttons are listed to the right, and please notice they are all currently turned on. I know that because these buttons are now showing in blue. I will point out the items listed below. These are the different permissions. And you will remember we clicked on the Copy Permissions button when we created this new employee. So it automatically marked all of the permissions that the current employee had. So if you needed to come in and maybe remove a couple of these, if they needed to be different. Another way you can look at these permissions is by turning off one or more of the buttons that are listed above. So watch what happens down below in the display panel when I start clicking on the buttons above. So you'll notice they start changing, and now because the only button that is blue that's turned on is the Parts and Service button. Now you will only see those permissions for your Parts and Service employees. And then please allow me to point out the two buttons to the right. One is for access, the other is for authority. So you will notice the description of the permissions listed below. Some of them show access, the others show authority. So if I were to turn off the authority button, then it would only show me now access to Parts and Service, since those are the only two buttons that are showing in blue. All right, so once you have everything included in the employee profile that you've created, always make sure you click on Save. Again, if there are any required fields, you will receive a pop-up message reminding you to go back and complete those fields. We will now take a look at the workstation. All right, these are all of the workstations that have been set up for my dealership. You can see different locations and different workstation names. If you are looking for information about your workstation that you're currently logged into, you can click on this workstation button. And here you have your location, some specifics listed below on the workstation detail. And then we have your point of service tab. This is where we will work with you during implementation to set up your printers, your cash drawer, and your credit card device. Next are the system rules. Think of the rules as what tells EverLogic what to do. So here you will be able to see which department the rule applies to. I'm going to share with you some examples today. For example, accounting. So when I choose accounting, you notice the list now only shows those rules applied to my accounting department. The rule code may be abbreviated or words may be combined together. They are listed in alphabetical order. The example I'm going to point out today is the warranty payment type. So for instance, if this rule is turned on using the number 1, then you will be able to use non-warranty payment types. such as check, cash, credit card. This is useful so in case the customer is required to pay a deductible on your warranty repair orders. If this rule is turned off with a 0, then that would only allow you to use the warranty payment type on warranty repair orders. You also have some rules here for your QuickBooks, which our support staff can help you as necessary. And then up at the top, your class tracking. So if your dealership does track class, then you would want to have your class tracking turned on. By the way, from time to time, these system rules may need to be adjusted based on specific error messages that you may receive specifically when you're working with your end-of-day processes or sending items to QuickBooks. All right, and then we have your system rules for your interfaces, and this is where items that are required within the system are added, such as your App 1 information or your credit card merchant ID. Okay, keep in mind that when you're working with some of these system rules, the answers are very specific. As I mentioned in the rule earlier, 0 is turned off, 1 is turned on. Some of the rules you'll have very specific words to use, and it is case sensitive. So please notice, for instance, if you're going to print an invoice receipt, on this rule, you will include the word receipt for a printout with listed parts and related charges. You would click standard if you only want to display totals. Again, these are case sensitive. So when you click on that rule and you're typing in the answer, you'll want to make sure that the answer you key is very specific. Always click OK. You'll want to make sure to click on the Save button at the top. It is a good idea, once you have saved the rule answer, is that you also log out of EverLogic and log back in order for the rule to be accepted. This is where you will also have the option for your low stock quantity. So when you're working with an invoice or a repair order, you will receive a pop-up message indicating if this item is low in stock. Again, in the description, it will tell you here, 0 is turned off, 1 will warn you, and 2 will not add low parts to either an invoice or a repair order if it's running low. If your dealership performs service follow-ups, there is an option here for you to choose the number of days that will be set up for your service follow-up calls. You can change the apply to rule to sales, and then we will only see those rules that apply to the sales department. In your sales department, if you do post-sales follow-up, there is an option here for your sold follow-up days, and you would just include in the answer the number of days that you wish to follow up on those sold vehicles. Also, when you're working with a new customer and when you are assigning a status to your customer, please notice the pop-up will show you those follow-up days. Those follow-up days are assigned in this system rules section. For example, my cold days follow-up is set up at 30 days. My hot days follow-up is set for 2 days. We also have one for warm days follow-up below. That is, for the most part, the most common system rules that we may be working with on a regular basis. Again, most of that is set up for you when you sign up with EverLogic and we set up your database during your implementation period. Our next item is titles. These are the titles that you can use when you are setting up employees in your system. The departments are the different departments that can be assigned to your employees that you've added. The addressing is automatically included in EverLogic, and this is the county and zip, city and state of your locations. So again, all of that is automatically included in your database. All right, and the next option is for your text messaging. Please be sure to work with EverLogic on enrollment for text messaging. And we then have our task list statuses. Now, these task list statuses are going to be available to you when you're working on the Sales Operations tab and you go to your task list. So here are the tasks that I am assigned to. These task list statuses are based upon those that are set up in the System Setup tab under Task List Statuses. There is also the option for a task list priority. Now we are going to go into the System Setup tab in the Company Shared section. So here we have the option for you to view your active vendors or click the New button to add a new vendor. Please keep in mind that if you are adding a vendor that is also listed in your system as a customer, very important that you modify the name of that individual when you're adding them as a vendor. And this is because when you're posting items in QuickBooks, QuickBooks will not be able to differentiate a customer and a vendor with the same name. So again, if you are adding a vendor that is also a customer or vice versa, you would want to make some type of adjustment to that name. So for instance, if you have a customer by the name of Richie Rich and Richie Rich is now also a vendor, you may want to put in Richie Rich and add a period at the end of his name. That way, when you send this information to QuickBooks, QuickBooks will pick up Richie Rich with a period as a vendor instead of a customer. So along with the company name, we've automatically assigned them a reference number, and then you can use your drop-down menu to select the type of company. So you have options like a manufacturer or a supplier, insurance and warranty companies, along with your floor plan and physical damage companies. And always make sure that that button is marked if they are an active vendor. And then down below on the contact information, we have our address and phone numbers, website, and contact information. And then there's a tab for your QuickBooks information. Again, EverLogic support can help you with your QuickBooks needs. We then have disclaimers. So if you have set up disclaimers, they would show here once you search. I will bring up the new disclaimer window. This is where you will add the name of your disclaimer and the description type. Those are the two mandatory items on this form, indicating if this is an internal, external, or warranty disclaimer. You can also assign a disclaimer to a location. You can assign it to a specific transaction in EverLogic, like invoice, repair order. You can control the font size. if it is a default, and down below are other options that you can use to edit your disclaimer. And in the upper right hand corner is that active button. Be sure to always save when there is a save option. Lastly, in this section we have our file categories. File categories are when you are working with your documents. So when you do have scanned documents, for example, the category is here for you to select on what type of document you're scanning. And those are your file categories, and new ones can be added by clicking on the new button. Again, whenever you do add items or make changes, always make sure you click the save button. And we have now completed the system setup on Company Shared. At this time, we're going into the System Setup tab, and we're going through the items in the Parts folder. The first item is your bin locations. These bin locations are different areas at your dealership where parts are stored. You can add new by just adding a name, description. Be sure that it's marked as active. Click OK, and then click Save. The next item is part kits, and part kits can be used separately or can be associated with labor codes. Here are some existing part kits that I have created. You can click on New to add a new item with a name, description. Always make sure that it's marked as active. And then after you click OK, always remember to click on the Save button. Once you have created the part kit, you'll need to add the parts by clicking the Add Edit Part Kit Items. Okay, so we'll take, for example, one I've already created. The oil change is selected here, and then I will click the Add Edit Items, and you'll notice that the items that are associated with this part kit is an oil filter and some oil. Let's see how a part kit would work with an invoice. We'll just open a new invoice, and in the parts box section, right click to add a part kit, and then for instance that oil change example we were going to add, it has now added the oil filter and the oil without me having to make those selections individually. So these little shortcuts are very helpful in EverLogic. That's when you're working with a part kit. Again, these part kits can be used with your labor codes. I'll show you how to use labor codes in a different section. We then have our part categories. And so here are the part categories that I have set up for this dealership. Again, you can click to add a new part category. EverLogic can help you with the mapping of your part categories. A lot of this is done during your implementation period. Anytime you have that save option, always make sure to save. There's an option for purchase order types. So for example, we have stock purchase, special order, warranty purchase, a non-parts PO, and an option for shop supplies. This is when you're working with your parts PO and you're working with your order type. You then have payment types, and most of these are automatically set up in your EverLogic, and some you can add by clicking on the new button and filling in the blanks and making sure that you are choosing the right options, and this should be marked as active if it is currently in use. Always click OK, and then there is a save option at the top. Shipping terms, and again, usually this is already set up for you. It has information about, UPS, FedEx, and other different methods of shipping. We have our price categories. Now, the price categories is something that you can assign to your customers to provide a specific pricing range for parts. Let me show you on a customer record where this is selected. So on the customer record, by clicking on that pencil icon, we're talking about the part price category. Again, this is a specific price assignment for your customers. So the options that you have to choose from in this drop-down menu are defined under System Setup, Price Categories. The next item is for your invoice types, such as retail, internal, external, or maybe warranty, or even the estimates. And lastly, in this section, we have our purchase order payment types. And again, usually these are provided. If you do need to add a new one, just click the new button, fill in the information, make sure it's marked as active, click OK, and as always, be sure to save. Those purchase order payment types are available to you on your purchase order in the upper right hand corner. And that completes the parts section of the System Setup tab. We will now go into the System Setup tab and we will talk about the items in the service section. The first item is labor codes. And as I search, I'm going to use my winterize as an example. By the way, we do work with Spader flat rate codes. At the top of this form, you'll name the labor code and fill any additional detail regarding a vendor, suppliers, or a description you'd like to add. And then if you want to use flat rates, you'll want to make sure you mark this box. There is a section for you to add an external, internal, warranty prices, and assign a labor time frame for each of those. And then at the far right, the amount that you have selected to charge for your shop and environmental fees for this particular labor code. If this labor will be taxable, be sure to mark the box taxable and then indicate below if you're taxing state, county, local, or other. You can add a description for the problem when using this particular labor code, and then down below you'll assign parts to your labor codes. This is where we talked before, you can add a part kit if you want to do so at the bottom. So these parts will be included when I use this labor code. Okay, where do I use the labor code? We'll give a quick example on a repair order, and under the service items, when I add a labor code, for instance, if I'm using the winterize example that we just discussed, on the parts tab, you'll now see those parts that have been automatically assigned for that labor code. This will save you a lot of time when creating repair orders using labor codes and part kits. The next item on the service section is the repair order types. These are the different repair order types that you can add by clicking New and then indicate if you want this to be your default RO type, assign it a name, description, and then down below be sure to mark the items that are affiliated with this particular repair order type. For example, the type E will be for external, I would be for internal, and W would be for warranty. You can also assign a price category. We spoke about that in our previous section on parts. The price categories can also be assigned to your repair order types. Always make sure that the active button is marked if it is currently in use. And then down below, you can choose which type of receipt will print with that repair order type. There is a box to the far lower right if you want to mark this as a default for your write-up tab on your deals. Always click OK, and then when you're adding new, be sure to save. And where would you see your repair order types? In the upper right-hand corner of a repair order. And please notice my default is set for retail. The next item on the System Setup tab is your appointment types. So if you are setting up appointments from a repair order, in the first section of the General Information and Cash Out tab, you can set an appointment. So my appointment types are scheduled appointment or walk-in. Those were created under the System Setup tab under Appointment Types. Again, when you set up a new appointment type, always be sure to click Save. Lastly, in this section, we have our repair order status. Again, you can click New to add a repair order status. The ones that I'm currently using are available to me when I'm setting up a repair order, and we're looking at the repair order statuses. The ones in this list will correspond with the ones that are under System Setup Repair Order Status. We have now completed the items in the Service section of the System Setup tab. On the System Setup tab, we're going to cover the items available in the Inventory section. The first item is your Inventory Vehicle Types. These are the types of vehicles that you sell. Again, you can click on New, fill in the details on the form, including the name, description, pack information if you do use pack at your dealership. Again, always make sure it's marked as active. Click OK, and then Save at the top. The vehicle types are available to you when you're working with your inventory, and you have your vehicle menu to select from here. The next item is the inventory chassis. We have those listed here. Again, there is a new option if you needed to add a new, and then save. And the last item in this section is your inventory statuses. Now, we do assign some inventory statuses when we set up your database during implementation. Those exist in the system. If you add new, you can click new and then be sure to save. But the ones that are available to you on a new inventory are the statuses that are available in the drop-down menu at the top right of the inventory form. And we have now covered the items that we use in the inventory section of the System Setup tab. On the System Setup tab, in the Customers folder, the first item is Advertising Leads. You can add a new advertising lead by assigning a name, description, marking it as active, click OK, and then remember to click Save at the top. The advertising lead information is available to you on the customer record here where it says lead source. The next item is the buying for. These are the ones we have. You can add new, click OK, remember to save. And those options are available to you on the buying for in the lower right section of the customer record. The next item is the using for. What is the customer using their purchase for? You also have the new button to add a new using for category. And those are again available on the customer record. This is in the lower right corner, using for. And then the last item in this section is your statuses. Now we provide you new, hot, lost, inactive, warm, and cold. Those are assigned during your implementation period with EverLogic. You can click on New and add a status, description, make it active, click OK, and remember to save at the top. And those prospecting statuses are available to you here on the customer record in the status section. These follow-up time frames for the statuses are located in your system setup under the system rules and the sales application, and the example being my cold day follow-up is 30 days. We have now completed the section on customers in the System Setup tab. On behalf of myself and everyone here at EverLogic, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I look forward to working with you again soon.